Hey, this is Reverend Dr. Marisha, your Lioness Queen. Happy Saturday. Welcome to your weekly Man Up Motivation. Please subscribe to this YouTube channel. I'm so honored. I recently just had a lot of subscribers, and I'm so thankful. Thanks for joining in. Thanks for tuning in. Thank you for the support. And so I wanted to tag back into what we talked about 2 weeks ago, bleeding on others. You still have wounds. So this is part three. This is the third part that I truly believe I feel like is the last layer of just demonstrating that we do bleed on others. And I love starting out with a quote or a poem. And so this week I found this quote by a woman named Camille Palika. And so the quote says, "We cannot have a world where everyone is a victim. I'm this way because my father made me this way. I'm this way because my husband made me this way." Yes, we are indeed formed by traumas that happen to us, but then you must take charge. You must take over. You are responsible. Ooh, that's powerful. That is so powerful. And when I think about that quote, it just makes me think that oftentimes that's what we do. We connect how we act, how we respond to what we experience. And sometimes that could be 5 years prior, 10, 20, or even decades. But unfortunately, it is something that we do, and we all do it. And the question is why? And so last time we had this conversation about this topic, we talked about triggers and how triggers still allow you to bleed on other people. And it is indicative that you still have wounds that you haven't healed from. And those triggers reopen the wounds. And so this week, we're going to talk about another T word, trauma. And I kind of touched on it the last time, but yes, trauma is something all of us have experienced in some form or another that typically it really isn't dealt with. And if you think about it, you know someone in your circle, in your family, that you know immediately, like right now, they haven't dealt with their trauma. And unfortunately, it's suppressed and oftentimes relived. And we live our trauma, right? When it's not dealt with, we relive it. And when we relive it, it is in ways not necessarily reliving the incident that happened, but we relive it in our minds. We relive it in our subconscious in a way that takes us back to that moment, that time, that space, that air, that when it happened. And we unfortunately can relive it over and over in our subconscious. And when I think about trauma, it also makes me think about how we respond to it as well, right? And when we experience trauma, naturally, our bodies respond when we experience trauma in a way where it's not something that we turn on, but it is something our bodies, it does, right? When we feel either we're in danger or we feel threatened. And it's like God gave us, I would say, this detector, which is our spirit. God breathed um, life into us. We became a living soul. We became a living spirit. And our spirit has the capacity to detect, right? And it gives us what I would say an alert, right? That sends signals to our brain. And guess what? You are, and the brain sends these signals. It's like, guess what? Hey, you are in danger and you need to act now. Our bodies naturally go through like an internal um, defense, I would say, a defense mode, right? A defense position. and in four ways, which you've probably heard of these four ways before. It's interesting that initially they say our response was connected to flight or fight. It was two in the beginning, but now they've added on fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. And so they say the fight response, right? Researchers say that it's typically a response connected to your childhood, right? From the lack of love, safety, acceptance that you didn't receive as a child from your parents, guardian. And as a result, because you didn't receive that, there's a response, there's a reaction that you typically have that shows that always wants to portray and maintain a way of power and control, which typically, unfortunately, is demonstrated in verbal aggression. That's the fight response. The second one is flight. We have, some of us have a flight response. And in that flight response, you're avoiding situations, you're avoiding the pain and the turmoil as a way of escape. You're trying to always escape situations. And so, if that is how you respond, you know, that's something that you did as a child and you still doing as an adult. So, they say if that is how you respond, children respond in that way when they're abused, when they feel threatened by their parents or by others. Excuse me. And as a result, as an adult, you do the same thing. You avoid, you escape when you're triggered or when situations mirror something, mirror the trauma, mirror something you experienced as a child, and you escape from different situations. Three, freeze. I was going to say something and I was like, I'll hold on to it. Freeze. That's the third one. And with freeze, researchers say typically this freeze response happens before fight and flight. It is a response where it's almost as if you're in total complete shock of what happened, what's going on, and you freeze up. And sometimes in this space, you disassociate basically yourself from, while the trauma is happening. Some people pass out, and some people just go totally limp. Then the last one is fawn, which is a response. It's kind of an alternate response of trying to protect yourself, almost like a protective mechanism to stay safe. And that is through trying your best to please the abuser, trying your best to make yourself not seem worthy, not seem credible, not seem important, almost in a way where you belittle yourself to boost up the other person, to please the other person so they don't hurt you anymore, so they do not, whatever the case may be. It is to try to protect, to keep you safe. And these are four ways we respond to trauma, because you have to also, when I was thinking about this and bleeding on others, it is our response is totally connected to how we bleed on other people. And these are four ways that how we respond to trauma. But think about this: when there's an immediate response, your body makes a decision, and it makes a decision based on a few things. It makes a decision based on the type of trauma you experience, the duration, how long you've been exposed to those traumatic events, the dynamic of the individual connected to the trauma. So whether it was your parents, whether it was your siblings, co-worker, principal, um, pastor, priest, right? And then also it can be based on genetics. It can be based on being predisposed to mental health disorders and personality traits. But whatever the case, how you respond, is based on those four areas. And sometimes they overlap which correlates the depth of your wound, right? And the intensity of, am I really still bleeding on other people? And it's so easy to say, I was thinking about this, and it's very easy to say, and I think many of us do it. I've done it, and you've heard this before, that the person that did this, right? The person that did this to me, this is how I am. Very similar to the quote, right? Um, because of the trauma, that they experienced as a child, the person hurt someone else because of the trauma they experienced. And when I was thinking about this, I was thinking about two incidences recently, right? One was R. Kelly. And right now, R. Kelly's lawyers are trying to appeal the decision, right, of 30 years. And they want the sentence reduced because R. Kelly he experienced trauma as a child. He also experienced sexual abuse as a child. So he wants a lesser sentence because technically this isn't his fault because somebody did this to him. And in turn, he did it to someone else, but it's not his fault, right? Then the other incident I think about is I'm not sure if you heard about it, but the comedian Monique, and who also experienced trauma as a child. Her brother sexually abused her for years as a young person, and so we've heard this before. We've heard many times, oh well, this is why I am the way I am. And the question is, when do we stop making excuses about our childhood? We all have been through something. We do, it's like, when do we stop blaming our past, right? Blaming our past on the decisions and choices that we are making today. And unfortunately, I have to talk about this because I think it's so relevant. Um, when you think about, I don't know if you heard about the incident with Monique and DL Hughley, and there was supposed to be, there was a comedy show that DL Hughley was running, and Monique was supposed to come in and be one of the comedians on his show. And she thought, I don't know what she thought, but she felt like she was supposed to be the headliner, and that wasn't the truth. And it was a big debacle. Not to mention she got there late, and as a result, her 15 minutes that she only had on stage, she bashed, she blamed, she criticized, she was nasty to DL Hughley, and then wanted to add another layer. Oh, it's because I'm a Black woman. What? Right? This is how he treats Black women. And then after that, she goes on social media and talks about DL Hughley more. And then she wants to bring in DL Hughley's daughter and what his daughter has experienced and how he didn't support his daughter. And it was just out of line. It was coming from a space and place from a wound. And I truly believe she has wounds that have not been dealt with. She is, if you think about the four ways we respond to trauma, she's a fighter. And as her way of responding, when she feels threatened or in danger, whether real or not, because, unfortunately, it's hard to really understand this concept, but trauma also has a way. The enemy, let me say, also has a way of pulling your subconscious down this rabbit hole. And when he pulls your subconscious down this rabbit hole, you do not have the capacity to really discern what's real and what's not. And unfortunately, that happens with trauma when not dealt with, right? And so I truly believe she lives in that rabbit hole where she does not know the difference between reality and the false narrative. She doesn't know the difference. And as a result, she lives in this false narrative where it is all about her, where it is all about that fight response. It is all about power and control. It is all about trying to stay in this space where I have to protect me. And that is her response. And that, as you have seen over the years, that is always how she always has responded in a way of a fight response. Never flight, never freeze, never fawn, but her position has always been right, that verbal aggression. And it is her way of trying to take back power and control that was taken from her as a little girl. And so there's a connection, but you don't see the connection until you realize you still have wounds that need to heal. And it's clear. It's so clear, but we are, I have to say that even in this time that we are in, 2022, mental health has come a long way. Now we are more knowledgeable about mental health and getting mental health and seeking mental health and what does depression mean and what does anxiety mean and what does bipolar mean and right, we are more knowledgeable than ever before. And we as a people need to heal our wounds. We as a people need to get help and stop displacing our anger and bleeding on others and really dig deep into our own demons, right? And that piece, you have to shift from living in the false reality to really living in the real world. Oftentimes when you're in the false reality, that false narrative, you don't know you have demons living inside of you because you've accepted that as your identity. Just like when Jesus came up to the demoniac, right? And Jesus asked, "What is your name?" Right? The demoniac had lived, that man had lived with those demons for so long, right? He lived in that rabbit hole for so long that the demoniac thought that was his name. But when Jesus asked that question, it triggered something in him. I need you to snap out of that reality that you're in. I need you to snap out of that narrative that you've been living in so long. There are some wounds there that need to be healed, but you're accepting an identity. I didn't call you that name. I didn't assign you that name. But your experiences, you internalized, you held on to, you let fester, you let grow without getting help. When wounds are not healed properly, they get infected. Well, so does this. So does your mindset. So does your subconscious. And that's why Jesus had to hey, what's your name? And it triggered something in him and he didn't even realize. But the demoniac did. The demons did. They're like, wait a minute. We've been good in here for a long time. Wait a minute. Oh, wait a minute. And the man, it did something to the man, right? And it did something to the demons too. But the question is, when do we dig deep and say, what's your name? When do we dig deep and say, I can't blame what happened 3 decades ago on what I'm doing right now, on what I'm thinking right now? And I truly believe Monique is not alone. There are many people just like her bleeding on others because they do not want to let go. They do not want to surrender that trauma over to the Lord because they're living in that false reality. They don't realize that it is a mirage. They don't realize it. When you've lived a certain way in a certain time for a certain length, right? That's what you know. This is who I am. This is who I become. But is that who God called you to be? Is that the person that God destined when he spoke life into your mother's womb? This is not something you can't do this alone. You can't do this by yourself. And typically, we all need additional help. We all need additional support of letting go of the trauma, letting go to heal the wound. And it's interesting. I was interviewing a Lioness Queen the other week, and she mentioned something very powerful. And she said, pride protects our past. It's a good one, right? Pride protects our past. And I said, woo, that's so true. It is the spirit of pride, definitely, that Monique is experiencing. It is the spirit of pride, right? That takes root and lends itself to what we think is protecting ourselves. But honestly, it reopens the wounds and we bleed on others, not realizing the trauma we are causing on other people. And unfortunately, that's what happened with Monique's situation. Because she bled on DL's daughter, she caused more trauma to the daughter. And so you don't realize the trauma that you're causing to other people. But it's time to heal. I like to say that trauma is not our fault. The tests and trials that we experience in this world, God said, we're not exempt. But guess what? I've already overcome everything that you may experience. He's already overcome those things for you. But healing is your responsibility. We have to stop blaming, right? We talked about time, triggers, and trauma, right? We can't blame time or feel like, oh, time will heal. Time doesn't heal. It just prolongs it delays the healing process. Triggers delay the healing process. Trauma delays the healing process, right? And so it's time to seek help. We have to woman up, man up, and take responsibility on getting help. And so you may be thinking, where do you start? And you start by making that decision that you want to heal and stay there. Let me say that again. You want to heal and stay whole. See, some people do the work. They do the work in the beginning and think the wound is gone. But until time or trigger, right? Time exposes it or trigger reopens it, you'll go right back to that starting place. That starting place, that starting space, thinking like, how did I get here? How did I get back to this space? And so next week, we're going to start this healing journey because I truly believe we need to heal. We need to be whole, but we need to stay whole. And it's time to heal and walk in total freedom. And it starts with making a conscious decision that I don't want to bleed on others. I don't want to cause others trauma from my lack of working on me. And so my prayer for you is that you're ready to start this journey. Will it be a journey? Yes. Because I truly believe the healing process, I truly believe trauma produces an onion. And there's layers to the trauma that you experience. There's layers in that wound that you experience. And so it takes time. It's a process. It's a journey. But just because it's all of those things doesn't mean that God cannot heal, deliver, and set you free. Jesus came 42 generations ago. He came to set the captives free. And in that process, that encompasses everything that we have ever gone through, everything that we're going through right now, and everything that we will ever go through. So there's nothing that has happened to you that Jesus didn't already take care of on the cross. And so I'm so excited about this healing journey that we will be going on together. And we'll talk more about it next week. So stay tuned. See you next week. Don't forget to follow me on all of my social media platforms and subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, the Lioness Queen channel. God bless you. Have a great week. And I'm telling you, God is going to do something amazing in your life when you begin that healing process. Amen.